The concept of multidimensionality originated in the 1880s when mathematicians realized that geometry existed beyond just length, breadth, and height. Which is why even when an object is facing you with three sides, you need another angle to know whether the part of it that is on the ground is a rectangle or a square or a triangle. Because the geometry could have had another dimension, necessitating the need that you change your angle of view to have a better understanding or a better perspective of the geometry. So in the same light, when we say the housing crisis is a multidimensional crisis, what it means is sometimes you need to change the angle you're looking at the problem from to have a better understanding and a more superior perspective of the crisis. That is, change our angle from which we look at these problems and find the one that can solve it directly from the foundation. So here is a thought. What if we treat housing like taxation? Or even better, make housing and taxation mutually dependent and symbiotic. But before I get into how and why the idea makes sense in my head, let me give some context. First of all, housing and the economy already exist together like Siamese twins, such that housing is the first thing, apart from food, that shows you when the economy is not working as it should. And one way to tell or predict that the economy is working well is when more middle class can access housing and move upward economically. And if otherwise were the case, we see a reverse of this order, where more people are then cutting their coats according to their size, and even worse, more economic downward mobility. Then second, let's look at how taxation or taxing is based on the nature, the flow, and the behavior of transactions. Because at the end of the day, it is the how, the why, and the what of each individual transactions that triggers the need for tax collection. And at the end, either on the giving or the receiving end of each transaction is people and their spending to meet their needs. And these needs, according to modern standards, fall within three categories, which are the physiological, which covers food, air, water, sleeping, rest, shelter. Then well-being, which covers health, safety, and security. And third is basic utilities, which covers transportations, electricity, roads, and every other thing that supports basic living. And even though this is a little bit of oversimplification, it brings me to the point of how inducing mutual symbiosis between housing and taxation can work and how it can pay well off in the future. Because it is based on these three classes of physiological well-being and utility needs that the three classifications of physical, social, and economic infrastructure, which are the three things that planning and development focus on, all revolve around. So in short, basically everything that drives transactions can be facilitated by, with, and through making sure that people have the resources to meet and pay for their physical, social, and economic needs. And if we double click further to consider how all of these needs revolve around housing, to make them about housing, there are certain considerations that, especially when providing public housing, must be in place to fully unlock these potentials for the people. This includes 7 non-negotiable things, number one of which is asset value. Because yes, it's public housing, but remember the end goal is economic development, economic prosperity, that is high GR and GDP growth. So it's important to make sure that this housing still has the potentials for high economic and asset value for the owners. Number 2 is infrastructure capacity, capacity to deliver and capacity to discharge or to take away the outcome of the infrastructure consumption. And this would be the things that supply infrastructure and utility and access and use of resources to the people, and things that remove the waste of such consumption. Number 3 is economic potentials, especially in the present and also for the future. And without transportation, which is number 4, all of this will not make any sense, because in cases where the economic opportunities are not located near, there is need for not just transportation facilities, but also connected transportation systems that allow people to access, especially public transport systems, to access those opportunities reliably, on schedule, and as affordable for their budget. The 5th one will be community vitality, which is where health, wellness, safety, and security are ensured to be provided in such housing programs. Number 6 will be the sense of place, that is the environmental character of such location. How well does it suit and fit the lifestyle, the culture, and the tradition of the would-be beneficiaries of the housing program? And lastly is socio-economic integration, that is, what class of people, what category of residents are we bringing in there, and what kind of people will this attract in the future? Once we've achieved this, we can then be rest assured that this housing program will then become the leverage or the catalyst through which the government can facilitate the increase of people doing more transactions. So more transactions will mean GDP growth, will mean economic prosperity, and which will trigger automatically the need to collect taxes. So that is the rationale behind the idea of making housing and taxation mutually dependent or symbiotic. So let's look at how this would work. Because as expected, there are a lot of moving parts into how this operates. But it all revolves around planning, facilitating, providing, funding, incentivizing the provision of more affordable housing units. And this is the most difficult part because in all honesty, the government hardly has enough resources to deliver enough housing units. So this will necessitate that we start with a pilot phase with just a few units in a few towns and cities. Then two, after these houses have been completed and are ready to be taken over, we then make tax credentials, tax records, the only criteria to qualify for this housing. And this is very necessary to achieve four things. That number one, nobody can use long legs. Number two, signal to others that you cannot enjoy affordable housing if you don't pay your taxes regularly. And number three, it provides the opportunity for proper documentation because now everybody taking each unit is properly documented for revenue collection. And number four, which is most important, is that government can then predict its revenue from each batch or each phase of these kinds of investments. So it is in between these four benefits of using tax credentials as the only criteria for qualifying for access to affordable housing that will then create the objectives for this program and also create the structure for scale, for dependability, for reliability, for predictability of the IGR, of economic development, of steady GDP growth, and most importantly, happier citizens. That is how I believe we could make this idea work for a win-win benefit to the government and also to the people. But what is more important, and which is the main reason behind sharing this, is that this drives more conversation about this until it gets to the ears of the people that need to listen. If anything remains true, it is that everything is connected to everything. And multidimensional problems, just like multidimensional entities, certainly have weak points. The more we try to find these weak points, the more our chances of actually successfully solving this our multidimensional crisis. And if you've been patient enough to watch this far, I really appreciate your time and I do not take it for granted. Thank you. But please, share this with someone you believe needs to hear this. And I hope this helps.